Hey, folks, welcome today. We are in Deuteronomy chapter 18 and two verses, and let's read those now. Deuteronomy 18:18. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him. I will hold accountable whoever does not listen to my words that he speaks in my name. Most of us were born hearing well, but all of us have to learn to listen well. Listening is a skill, it's an art that really must be cultivated. A doctor by the name of Ralph Nichols, considered by many to be an authority on this particular subject, believes that we think four, perhaps five times faster than we talk. So that means if a speaker utters 120 words a minute, then a listener thinks at about 500 words a minute. And that difference then offers a really strong temptation to listeners to take mental excursions, kind of drift a little bit, to think about a movie they watched last night, or something that needs to be done at work tomorrow, or the need to get maybe that maybe get the car tuned up before you take a trip this weekend to the mountains, and then you just kind of phase back into the speaker's talk. Research done at the University of Minnesota reveals that in listening to a 10-minute talk, hearers operate at only about a 28% efficiency. And the longer the talk goes on, the less a person understands, the less they track with their ears what the speaker's mouth is saying. And for a preacher, I was thinking about that in respect to a preacher, that can be pretty frightening because many preachers, and I do my very best not to do this, many preachers will preach for 40, 45, 50 minutes. Thinking about those things, just think about how much people drift. But that's why I try to keep mine a little more concise, a little short. I know how I am, so I try and relate that to how everyone else can be. Now, I know there are people out there that could sit and listen to someone for an hour. I don't think anybody could sit and listen to me for an hour, but there we go. That's why I try and keep it short and sweet. But that's probably why someone has said that preaching is the fine art of talking in someone else's sleep. And I thought that was pretty spot on. Sometimes I think. Good communication. That's what we're talking about today in Deuteronomy 18. God said he was going to put the words in the mouth of one. Good communication. It is a tricky business. Um, we all of us, in some way or another, have some pretty heavy mental anchors dragging across our brains at any point of the day and sometimes in the night. And it's hard for any one person, preacher, whatever the case may be, to seize some people's attention and then hold it for an extended period of time, especially since we can think much faster than someone can speak, someone can talk, which means, or which brings up the seldom mentioned secret of a good sermon. And that's what I was speaking of a few moments ago. Other than, aside from God's most vital part, and that is His Word, the most vital part, I think there are probably two ingredients. As I think about how God directs people, as He was directing this person today in Deuteronomy, the one He was speaking of, two very special ingredients, I think. First, that speaker has to speak well. And then, secondly, the one who listens has to listen well. and that goes across the board. Uh, Preacher to congregation, speaker to audience, um, professor to students, whatever the case may be. Neither one of those things, speaking or listening, are automatic. Both of them really are hard work. And then when you think about again a setting where a Bible is open. It doesn't automatically mean that that mind that's listening is going to hear everything that's going to be said and be able to process that. It depends a lot on the sincerity of the listener. If they really care to know what the speaker's saying, and then on the other hand, what the speaker is saying can't be like the Andy Griffith show where Andy and the preacher were differing on things just a little bit, and the preacher had gotten word that Andy said that his sermons were dry as dust. So that goes back to the preacher then. But thinking then about those who listen, and maybe in respect to, we're thinking biblically, so maybe thinking in respect to those who listen to a pastor, to a preacher. What can be done? What can a listener do, no matter who the listener is? What can a listener do to keep what the pastor, teacher, whatever the case may be, interested in what's being said, instead of thinking about how the preacher or pastor or speaker or teacher or professor, whatever the case may be, could improve? How about thinking about turning over the flip side of the coin and consider how we can do better about our listening skills? And this will help us not only if we're listening to a pastor, preacher, whatever the case may be, it'll help us when we're speaking, when we're having a conversation with someone. It can help us in a lot of different ways. Listening is very important. And that's what the author was talking about here in Deuteronomy, and the words that God would give to this person. It would be someone who would be willing to hear and obey. I think that's key. So maybe we'll think about that a little bit, do a little research, and maybe talk about how we can be better listeners. And perhaps